All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Tuesday, July 1st, right here on your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. And this is All In Horns, presented to you by Rogue Sports Network. Well, we had some news break over the weekend that Texas State, Jake, is going to be joining the Pac-12. All three of them, baby, the big three. You've got Washington State, you've got Oregon State, and now you've got Texas State. It's just the state of the conference. Sorry, that was a poor joke.
That was
yeah, it was bad, but we are where we are. It's summertime, so Jake, where do you think this news came out? Do you think the Pac-12 doesn't really hold any water anymore? I give them a lot of credit for trying to keep that thing afloat and trying to rebuild this conference basically from nothing. But I mean, what are we doing, and how do you feel about it? Like, is it even worth them doing it? And then we'll just kind of go from there and just kind of talk about the state of where college athletics is right now in terms of conferences. But when you saw that Texas State was joining the Pac-12, what motivates a team like Texas State to even make that move?
Well, I mean, there's no really hidden secret. The growth of the Texas State athletic department over the last several years, the football program, going from FCS to Division I to kind of being terrible for a little while, but they've just been growing and growing. And I know they supposedly have pretty good NIL, and they're trying to become maybe like a TCU is, where you have those years where you compete for the playoffs. So I can't imagine the school took this move lightly. Mm-hmm. And so I have to imagine the Pac-12 sold them on a vision, sold them on other teams that they're planning on getting. And I wouldn't be surprised if a Boise State is at the top of that list. I imagine the Mountain West is going to get some of their better teams picked. Washington State and Oregon State, they carry a little weight with their names. And the fact that they haven't joined another conference tells me that they're being sold on some type of vision. Now, whether this selling of this vision turns out into something that actually becomes a real football conference, I don't know. But you have to imagine whatever their plan is, they're trying to get to a Big 12 type level.
And that's kind of what it comes down to, does it not, though, Jake? Is that this has to be football is king in college athletics. I mean, if you don't have, unless you are the Big East, where they are strictly a basketball conference, essentially. If you don't have a football program to sell, and your conference may just dissolve. I mean, you may not have much of a conference to stand on. Like, football is kind of king. Now, Oregon State, not a bad baseball program. I have no idea where Washington State is as a baseball program. I know Texas State is working on it. They have, like you mentioned before with their football program, they've got some years where they're good. They got some years where they're bad. But they are trying to grow. Now, I don't know anything about a Texas State basketball program. I feel like they have actually made March Madness in the last 5 years or so. I feel like maybe they've made a trip. I could be wrong about that. But I'm just curious, kind of what that vision you're talking about could possibly be. And if they do get a Boise State, that would be a big get. I think that would actually be really big for the conference. I'd be very interested to see kind of what their plan is moving ahead. I could see them kind of going for a San Diego State. I could see them going for obviously like a Boise State or something along those lines. Maybe
North Texas.
Maybe
get another Texas school.
Yeah.
North Texas is a pretty decent football program that's been only getting better. That's another name I would have to imagine is on the radar.
Yeah. And I'm curious, maybe if they could poach a bigger school from a Power 5 conference that would be willing to be like, hey, now we're the top dog in this conference and we could win a conference. And I'm not saying like an Oregon or something, but I'm saying like maybe there's an Oklahoma State out there that is willing to move from their conference and say, hey, look, we're now officially the best athletic program in this conference, and we can kind of run this thing. I'm curious if there's someone out there that have their eye on.
Somehow
Texas A&M.
This is from ESPN. This is from ESPN. So I can't believe neither one of us realized this. And maybe it's because we've initially read it and just forgotten about it over the last year. Last year, they have added, they're just not officially in. Fresno State, San Diego State, Boise State, Colorado State are all joining the Pac-12.
Oh, so it's already official.
That was official like last year.
And we probably just completely forgot about it then. I'm glad you brought that up.
I can't believe the broadcasters didn't talk about it unless it happened after during the Colorado State Texas game. But that must have just fell under the radar after everything else that was going on. Didn't realize, but they were picking up some momentum, but then they failed to add Tulane. They tried to add Tulane. Memphis, they weren't able to add because Memphis's buyout from the conference they're in was apparently very large.
Well, I'm curious if when that time comes that Memphis would be willing to make that jump.
Yeah, and so Memphis
Tulane's that would be a great ad.
Memphis is still in the cards, apparently. And as we know, geography does not matter in this current state because geographically that doesn't make much sense. But neither does the
Pacific Athletic Conference.
Yeah.
Oh,
neither does the Big Ten. I mean, you have from Rutgers all the way to USC.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, you feel like the Memphis ad would be big for them because Memphis has been a legitimately good football program for a little while now. Well, they've beaten some SEC schools and maybe not the top of the crop of the SEC, but they've beaten a Mississippi State, I believe, maybe an Ole Miss one year. They've beaten some decent teams.
Well, so is Tulane. Tulane would be a huge get.
Yeah.
If that train continues,
supposedly Tulane is not happening.
Oh, okay.
But I'm sure they're not going to give up on it. But Tulane and Memphis, those are the type of schools that would be big ads. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they go after North Texas as well. Yeah. Try to get some of these smaller programs that have been trying to kind of buy into and develop their football programs into being better and maybe be, getting a little bit more of a revenue sharing going on within those schools to allow them to maybe, grow into a major conference.
Yeah. And that's the thing is what is it going to take for them to be considered, one of the power 5 conferences yet again?
Actual results on the field. Yeah. It's the only way that'll happen. The names won't do it, even though there's not bad names in there, but when you talk about being a major conference that, gets an automatic bid into the playoffs, it probably takes some results on the field and a lot of negotiating under the table in the sliminess that goes on.
The way I kind of look at it is obviously you've got the Power 4, which is really a Power 2 because you've got the Big Ten in the SEC. There can be a conference that gets aligned and can compete with the ACC and the Big 12 at some point in time. Where those two conferences are right now, if you can get somebody to compete with the likes of a Clemson or, Big 12 right now, it's kind of hard football-wise to just be like, oh, you've got a powerhouse.
Whoever comes out of that.
Yeah. But
Texas trying to with the money.
Texas Tech is trying to buy themselves a conference title in football. But yeah, I just think, if there is a conference that's going to do it, you're going to have to be able to compete with the likes of the Big 12 and the ACC first. And then maybe once you kind of like start getting their numbers and you're like, well, this conference is kind of legit. They're putting up some good film out there and some good wins against other conferences, other power conferences. Then maybe they get an automatic bid in the playoffs, come a restructuring of the playoff system at some point in time.
Yeah, because you do feel like there's room for another conference to break in. The problem is, I don't
expand it to 16 teams immediately.
And especially since it is going to expand to 16 teams, you feel like there's room for another conference. But I'm sure the SEC and the Big Ten, who are kind of controlling things, aren't going to allow someone else to just walk in and get an automatic bid very easily. So it feels like we're getting closer to an end result on all this realignment that has been happening over the last several years. But the Pac-12 is an interesting puzzle piece that I'm not sure where it's ultimately going to fit. But I guess if you're Texas State, you go, well, we're never going to be able to, win anything in the conference we're in as far as being on a national spotlight. this is at least taking a leap of faith and taking a chance to get your name in the hat. And
And
that
you're
to me
gonna
is what
need
this move is.
and you're gonna need about 6 to 7 other programs to feel the exact same way.
Yeah, because Fresno State has been good at times, but it's been a long time since
Been a
they've been
long
really good in
time.
football.
Yep.
And so you have some programs that have had some history of being a top 25 team. The problem is it's nothing consistent. Washington State and Oregon State are two examples of that. And also these teams just trying to avoid the transfer portal madness as well. I imagine we'll know how it's going to shake out, but it's going to be a few years, I think, until we see this kind of whole picture settle, and then we know what the next decade, hopefully decade plus of college football will look like. Because I think everyone's ready for things to just stop. Let's
And
get to the end point.
I don't know if Jake, I almost feel like there may not be an end point at this point. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just feel like the constant restructures and the shifting and the moving around of conferences has become such a normal thing, and it's become such a big thing with TV deals, and it's become such a big thing with contracts and stuff that we're gonna see the Memphises. Now we might see it settle down more so on the SEC, Big Ten, level in terms of the big conferences. We might see it kind of slow. Like, look, there's only so much room before you start watering down your own conference and you start, watering down the talent level with lesser programs. So that's going to have to level out at some point between the major four conferences. But I mean, are you telling me that the Big 12 wouldn't be interested in adding, another conference team, maybe from the ACC? Or something that would maybe elevate their conference at all. If there was a Miami that all of a sudden was like, yeah, we're willing to get out of there. I mean, of course they would.
Yeah, they would. Do I think that I feel like the power conferences are going to be settled for at least a little while. Those top four conferences, unless they lose someone, unless the Pac-12 is able to poach someone,
Yeah.
because there are massive buyouts in these conferences. I mean, if it's a problem to get Memphis out of their conference because of a buyout, granted that's the Pac-12 money, not in it, but still, these conferences aren't going to be looking to potentially dilute their conference,
Right.
And paying tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, on what all it will take just from not only the buyouts but the rebranding, all the things that go in to the commercials. I mean, everything changes whenever you bring a new conference in, and so it's a lot of effort and money. So I do feel like the power conferences, I'm sure we'll see movement in the future. But I do feel like they're mostly settled for a while. Now
Yeah.
I think we're going to, so we've seen kind of the Power Four realignment now. Next, I think, is the G5 realignment. And that's what I think we're going to see over these next years. And that's going to be the Memphises, the Tulanes, all these teams trying to find their place to where they can still try to compete to get to the playoffs. And have that growth that affects those schools tremendously, just like the Final Four does in basketball, making a playoff in football. That's going to bring your attendance and application rates, everything like that, way up.
I'd be interested to see if the Mountain West getting poached by the Pac-12 like this isn't thinking to themselves, you know what, we're going to have to create a G5 power conference. Like, we're going to have to get the top dogs of the G5 around all these other conferences. The best G5 teams in each one of these conferences are going to have to combine to join into one kind of like super, G5 conference to where, and it might have a major effect on the other G5s. But I feel like that might be where we're headed, to where we're going to get a Tulane, a Memphis, and all these other, G5 teams that are going to be competing, whether that be UNLV, whoever, all competing.
Toledo is another name that
Yeah,
kind of sticks out to
in,
me.
in one kind of, lack of a better word, mega G5 conference to push for that playoff spot, and I'll be interested. Now, one thing that is solidified that I think that happened with the new playoff restructured rules of you're just in the playoffs depending on your end of season ranking 1 through 12. Notre Dame is going to be an independent. there's no reason now for them to join a conference. There may have been some whispers previously of them being like, well, heck, if we're not ever going to be a top 4 seed and get a bye week, then we might have to visit a conference to join in. With that being the case now, of they can be the number 2 team and still get a bye week, I don't know if there's incentive enough for them to join a conference.
Unless top teams stop scheduling them, which is a possibility, because if you're not going to get in with 3 losses, and like if we're 5 years from now, we haven't seen a team with 3 losses get in the playoffs, especially if it's still a 12-team format, why would you schedule a Notre Dame in the non-conference? And I hate saying that because I love it. Like, I love the fact Texas is playing Ohio State week 1. But if Ohio State or Texas loses to Ohio State week 1 and then loses to a Georgia and drops one other game and doesn't get in, and you could have just scheduled San Jose State week 1, played a week non-conference, lost your 2 games in conference, still made the playoffs, you think schools aren't going to start to schedule differently?
My argument against that would be that, Jake, the number one thing, at least in this first year of the 12-team playoff, it could change. That narrative could change drastically by the time this actually comes into fruition. But for what we know now, the body of work that we know now, the number one argument was strength of schedule and your strength of record and that sort of thing. I mean, I do think that on the flip side of it, if you're going to have a 3-loss team make the playoffs, it's going to be you lost to Georgia, you lost to Notre Dame, and you lost to Ohio State, 2 of those being non-conference, one of them in your conference.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, if this, we have to see how it shakes out. We've only had 1 year of it, and there were arguments for three lost teams to get in. Obviously, that didn't happen. But I could see it because you saw Alabama saying it, go, well, let's just schedule a week non-conference. I didn't think their argument had much merit with what they had scheduled, but
Look
still.
at where A&M was at the end of the year going against Texas. If they won the SEC or were competing to win the SEC, a lot of people were looking at, hey, they only lost to Notre Dame by a few points, like
that would have been the most and I'm glad we didn't get to live in a scenario where we saw this out, but that would have been the most interesting test of the format, would have been if A&M beat Texas and then lost in the SEC title game, though that is a little bit, but they had the 3 losses. So, they could have ended up with 4 losses and going, are they in the playoff or not? Are you going to punish them for losing a conference title game?
Yep.
And so we're going to see a scenario play out that'll answer this question. But just to play devil's advocate to your Notre Dame point, I think that is the one thing that could affect it. Because if they can't schedule USC, if they can't schedule an A&M, a Texas, an Oklahoma, whoever it is, all of a sudden they're, like you said, strength of schedule will still matter no matter what. And so if your strength of schedule is just terrible and you're Notre Dame and your best win is a bad Stanford team, I think you're going to have a hard time getting in the playoff with even just 1 loss.
Yeah. No,
which
I
we've
agree.
seen they lose stupid games. Let's not forget they lost to Northern Illinois last year. In the year they made the national championship game, they lost to NIU at home after beating A&M. That loss gets forgotten about because of the run they made. They did lose to NIU at home week 2 after beating A&M. So,
and that was a lot of the reason why people maybe didn't even have them making the playoffs, was because of that loss. But
yeah,
they proved that they went on a playoff run. I can't take it away from them. They beat Georgia, they beat Indiana, and they got to
the Georgia win was very impressive, regardless of Georgia having a backup. The way they were able to run the ball against that front solidified their run not being a fluke.
Right, 100%. All right, Jake, this was a fun conversation. Again, anytime we get into these talks, which we've had these talks before, if you're just now, if this is the first time you're watching our channel and you've made it 20 minutes into this episode and you're enjoying this conversation, this is not the first time we've had discussions like this. I'm sure this almost very same conversation will come up yet again, especially over the summertime, whenever we're in the dog days of summer and there's no sports news to talk about. This is kind of our go-to, conversation, because Jake and I could talk about this for another hour, more than likely, with no interruptions. So we're gonna call it right there. We're gonna shut down the episode, and we will. Just a reminder: it is 4th of July week. And so we are not going to have a Friday episode on the 4th of July. So we'll have 2 more episodes this week, but typically we do come out with these episodes 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, dropping at noon each and every single day. And so just like, share, subscribe, stay with the channel throughout summer. And then once we get going again in football season, these episodes, it'll be tough to keep them under 30 minutes. So that'll be difficult to do, but we're going to do our best to do exactly that. But we're bringing you daily content, all things Texas Longhorns and college sports for the most part. That's Jake Jimerson. I'm Tanner Carlson. As always, ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.